Hi, John with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at some rear suspension enhancements. We're talking about SumoSprings, and we've installed them on our 2020 Forest River Georgetown GT5. Now the Georgetown is built on Ford's rock-solid F53 chassis. And this chassis is used across a variety of platforms. So it can leave you sometimes with either wanting more support or maybe your ride is just a little bit too stiff. And this is where SumoSprings are going to come in. They're going to give you constant support. These are tied in on the bottom of your frame and the top of your leaf spring. So it's something that's going to help you with crosswinds. It's going to help you with added support if your slides are out. This is one of the best investments, personally, I think, that you can make purchasing the rear and the front SumoSprings that we also have available. This is what your SumoSprings are going to look like mounted up on your Georgetown. They mount up on the outside of your frame, and there's one of these per side, and they sit on your leaf springs like this. These are made out of a high-density microcellular urethane. Unlike airbags that can leak over time, these things don't need any maintenance. They're also resistant to road chemicals, salts, and things of that nature. These particular ones are rated at 7,000 pounds. Now that's not going to increase the load carrying capacity of the Georgetown. It's just going to give you 7,000 pounds of support for the sway, for the bumps in the road. Now the installation of the rear SumoSprings is really no easy task. There is going to be some frame drilling. You're going to have 4 holes on each side that you're going to have to drill. And probably another challenge is going to be actually getting the coach up in the air. We do have to raise the coach so that the rear axle is hanging freely. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. If you want to see how we installed them on this Georgetown, stick around. To begin the installation, we need to have the coach up in the air so that the rear axle is hanging freely. If you have a jack at home, that'll be fine. It's you're still going to want to use jack stands, but it is possible to do just one side at a time with the SumoSprings. So to begin with, we're going to remove our simulators. I'm going to need an 1 1/8" socket, extension, and I'm using a 1/2" ratchet today. Now on these simulators, there's going to be 2 of the lug nut covers that look a little bit different than all the other ones. They're going to be 180 degrees apart too. These are the ones we need to remove. Now these aren't going to be on very tight. Once you have those loose, you can take the simulator and set it off to the side. Now to remove the lug nuts, we're going to need a 13/16 socket. Then we can remove the tires. Now we can grab one of the SumoSprings and one of the top brackets, and you're going to have 2 of the 3/4 inch bolts. All we're going to do right now is attach the top of the bracket to the SumoSpring. This will be the top, because the bottom only has 1 hole on it. And you're going to see these are spaced differently. Just line them up. Also, the brackets are all made the same, so they are not side specific. I'm working on the driver's side today, but passenger side is going to be the exact same. It's going to be a 14mm socket you need. A problem I just ran into, and you may run into this as well, is we have a nylon spacer here in between. These are in between the springs just to keep them from squeaking going down the road, but it's raised up right now, and this could cause an issue for us when we're trying to mount this up later. We're going to be drilling into the frame, and we want to make sure we have as much options as possible here. And with this being so far back, I'm going to trim this out. I'm just going to use a razor knife and cut just where it's raised up right here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now that we have that raised portion out of the way, we'll be able to adjust this however we need to. Now that we have the top bracket attached to the Sumo spring, we're going to attach the bottom bracket. Now these are also not side specific. They're going to be exactly the same. So just grab one of those. You're also going to have a lower bracket, some carriage bolts, and 2 locking flange nuts. So what we can do right now is attach the Sumo spring. Ultimately, it's going to attach like this, with this edge here aligning up with these. But there's only one bolt holding it on the bottom, so if we need to spin this a little bit, it's not a big deal. This also is 14 millimeter. Now we can take our fully assembled Sumo spring. We're going to place this on the spring pack. Now you're going to have the 2 ears on either side, and then this hook is going to go around the factory U-bolt. So it kind of sits up there just like this. Then we can take our carriage bolts and the lower bracket and bolt this up. From here I'm using a 15 millimeter socket to run it up. So another situation we ran into here was how long these carriage bolts are, and we ran out of socket right here. So these kits are designed for a wide variety of applications in different depths in spring packs. So in order to make life a little bit easier for us, we're just going to mark a point on the bolts here, and then we're going to cut them with a Sawzall or a Dremel. Now this could vary according to your coach as well, so I can't tell you to do this before test fitting this on here to make sure you have enough socket room here. We'll get these off of here and get them cut. I'm just not comfortable cutting these this close to the brake line. Now, in order to find our mounting holes and mounting position for the Sumo springs, we need to measure from the top of the frame down 6 inches, and that 6 inches is going to be for the center of the lower mounting hole on the Sumo spring. We're going to be using the two holes on each side, the lower one and the upper one. The middle is left as a reserve. So one thing I like to do, especially with these frames, just take a piece of metal, anything flat edge, and hold that up there. And then you're going to have something that you can push your tape against and give you a nice surface here. Just make sure you have your hand on top so it doesn't curve down. The important thing right here is just to do the same thing on both sides so you get an accurate measurement. It's not going to be the end of the world if it's not exactly 6 inches, but we want it as close as possible. So I'm holding the tape. I'm going to mark a dot right here for the 6 inches on the frame. I'm going to come around to the inside over here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my straight edge, line up the two so I know that it's level. I'm going to mark a line right there, okay? So I've already done it on the other side of the Sumo spring for the front here. Our next step is to take a floor jack and we're going to raise the center axle, the center of the axle up. And all I'm going to do is watch these two lines meet. So one thing to watch is we're even on the right side, but over here on the left side, I'm not even. And it's important to know that this spring can be one way or cocked the other way. What we want to do is raise the axle up and just rotate this spring one way or another until it's 6 inches on this side and 6 inches on that side. That way we know we're parallel with the frame, and then we can mark our holes to drill. Okay, now that I'm level on both sides, I'm going to mark a center point on both sides, and then I'm going to drill out the 4 holes with a 3/8 inch drill bit. 1, 2, and 3 and 4 in the same positions on the other side. Now before you drill, you do want to make sure that you're clear on the other side of the frame. Make sure there's no wiring harness or connectors on the other side. With the hole drilled, I'm going to insert the mounting hardware. There is no lock ring or anything, or lock washer. It's just going to be the locking flange nut here and the hex bolt. And we're just going to run this through just to hold the lower portion in place right now. Now it could still move, so double check your measurements, but for now I'm going to drill the left lower mounting hole. Drill that through, insert the hardware, and then just repeat the same process for the upper holes as well. It really isn't easy drilling through these frames. You are going to need a nice set of drill bits to be able to get through. Nothing really special, just these frames are pretty tough. So I'll take this hardware here and get the lock nuts installed on the back side. And then in the instruction manual, you're going to have torque settings, so you can torque these down. And then we'll just complete the exact same process on the passenger side. That's for leveling, drilling, and tightening the SumoSpring. So once you have both sides installed, tightened, and torqued to the specs in the installation manual, essentially the SumoSprings are installed. The only thing we need to do from here is reinstall our tires and wheels and torque them to the specs for our coach. That'll do it for today's look at the installation and some of the features of SumoSprings custom helper springs on our 2020 Forest River Georgetown GT5.